This is Retail Voices, the podcast where leaders from the world of retail and outside of retail talk straight about what really works. Insight, innovation, and the human side of the industry all in one place. Hosted by Mark Lack. That's me. Let's dive in. Okay, good. So, hi Luke, welcome to Retail Voices. It's great to have you here.
Oh, great to be here, Mark. Thank you for having me on.
Nah, no problem at all. So in this episode, we're going to be diving into mindset, motivation, and marginal gains, three elements that define success in both business and life. And you've worked with leaders across several different sectors, from sports to corporate, helping them build resilience, awareness, and performance habits that stick. So can you kick us off by introducing yourself and explaining what the 1% is really about?
Yeah, sure thing. So, as you said, my name's Luke. I run the business, The 1%. A bit about me, I'm 40. I've got 3 kids, 9, 7 and 4, married, run a business. And I'm saying that for context because I'm not like a 22-year-old sat behind a laptop in Dubai shouting at guys to do a few burpees to help them, right? I'm kind of in the thick of it like all the guys I work with, and I think that's always important to recognise. I mean, the business that I run is relatively small comparatively to the gents that I work with, but I think, you know, in the thick of it, as we were saying offline as well. So that's a bit about me. I work with guys who, on paper, life really good. Great career, business going really well, got family, wife, kids, 2.4 kids, materially in a good spot. More often than not, though, if we peel back the onion and look underneath, they're not as happy and as content as they would like to be, feeling a bit overwhelmed, maybe using the word burnout. And this sort of feeling of, it's all great on paper, but, and it's quite a large but. And the but is usually, there's a multitude of areas where probably they're not showing up as best that they want. And nothing is completely on fire, but this kind of background feeling of, I'm just not quite necessarily where I would like to be. Outwardly looking in, it all looks fantastic, but I don't feel great. And, you know, kind of like knowing that they want and need to be better, but can't quite see for the wood for the trees or work out why. And this kind of strange dichotomy of, well, I'm very successful in one domain, I've done very well for my career. Like, why does it feel like I'm not really enjoying the fruits of my labour as much as I would like? So that's, if that gives you a bit of context.
Oh, that's great. That definitely gives context, and I can certainly relate to that. I've had, you know, a successful career, and sometimes you do feel as though you're just not quite getting it all. I know they say you can't have it all, even though we'd like to have it all, but there sometimes just feels like there's something missing. And that sort of, I suppose, gets us into the first question that I have for you. So, you know, the phrase 1% better every day has become a mantra in performance coaching. But when I look at retail, every day is chaotic and results driven. So how do leaders actually live that idea? How can they get through that?
It's a really good question. And I think there's levels to sort of how you would tackle that, because, and it also depends on like what you're trying to look at and what you're trying to address. But what you said there about the retail environment being chaotic and hectic and busy, well, for me, that my experience, that's life. Like, as we've just said offline, like I've got a lot going on at the moment as well. And I think if we just take that as a default, it's busy, it's hectic, that's okay. And typically, gents out might say, I'm too busy, I don't have time. That's true. So I'm not going to deny that. Therefore, nothing. Therefore, we can't. And that's not the way to operate, right? And they probably wouldn't necessarily behave like that in business. They'd have a look at what can we do? How do we work it out? And let's make a path. When it comes to themselves, typically, they kind of almost forget that kind of mantra. So I'll play an example out here, which kind of will highlight how I like to think of getting to the root of what's going on, these little marginal gains. Because, so I'm not a straight fitness coach, but I think fitness and exercise has to be a part of high performance, because if you're not looking after your body, it also impacts the brain. It's not the only thing by any stretch, but it'll highlight, I guess, the holistic nature of what I'm talking about. So let's say someone goes, oh, I need to, you know, objectively, everyone knows they need to exercise, right? You need to do some training. I'm too busy, I haven't got time to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. Agreed, you can't. Therefore, I can't exercise. No, you can't go and spend 2 hours a day in the gym. So then how we play out this example? So let's say I'm working with someone and we say, right, we decide you want to start to build out a simple morning routine with some physical activity, some exercise. And we're going to lower the bar, right? So we go, what I want you to do is a little 5-minute workout as soon as you get out of bed. Not going to the gym, not lifting any weights, not even going for a run, just using your body. Can you commit to that? And they're like, yeah, of course I can. And usually, let's say the motivation's high because they've got a coach and they're in a program and they spent some money and that's it. Off you go. Come back. Did you do the workout? And they say no, right? So level 1, PT accountability. You lazy prick. Do it next time. Like, oh. They'll probably go and do it. The brute force approach, right? What have we learned there, though? Absolutely nothing. We're brute force and doing something we agree they need to do. Well, how is that going to happen and be sustainable long term? Just like sustainable business revenue, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's not, right? If I'm there to shout at them, maybe they shout at themselves. Not a very healthy way to do it. So arguably not the most pragmatic response. So instead I say, why? And they go, oh, I was knackered. I call them a prick again. I go, why were you knackered? I was up until midnight. We're getting somewhere. Why were you up until midnight? Oh, when I finished work, I was really stressed. I'd had a different conversation with one of my team. I hadn't actually called this client and addressed something. So when I walked through the door, I was playing on my phone. I ignored the kids a bit. Mrs. shouted at me. I was a bit pissed off for that. Then I didn't really do bedtime well. I checked this other news report, which stressed me out. So I had off a bottle of wine to take the edge off. And then I saw this other thing come in. So I stayed up late, didn't sleep well. Okay. So are you a lazy prick? Or is your evening routine out of whack? Your work-life boundaries, stress management, sleep hygiene, technology use, relationship with alcohol, food. 1 or 5 minute workout we've asked you to do in the morning, and there's a hornet's nest of stuff here that's not set up or serving you to do something relatively straightforward. I'm looping this back. What's this got to do with marginal gains, 1%, habits and behaviours? So more often than not, with something we want to do, and we'll try and do it, and then it doesn't happen.
Yes.
So we there go, it's impossible.
Yes.
We go, well, no. So there's 2 parts to this. One part is lower the bar. So this gentleman we're talking about, him doing 2 hours a day in the morning at the gym, ain't going to happen, is it? So we lower the bar and go, okay, well, let's do something smaller. Well, that still didn't happen. Well, why? Well, there's this fucking shit. Sorry, excuse my French. There's a lot of stuff here that's not serving him, right? So how about we address that, do some root cause analysis like you would do in a business. So once we do the root cause analysis, well, then he's on top of it. He's accountable to himself. He knows what he needs to do so he can get up and do that. But then what then that sort of tends to do is you can start to build a bit of discipline into your life. Because then, like, the problem is most people try to be disciplined or build discipline when life's set on hard mode. Like I guess the mess that I described there, the level of friction involved in him doing something as straightforward as a 5 minute workout is super high. We address that. We show him what he needs to do. He understands what he needs to do. Get up and does his workout. 9 times out of 10, he's building discipline. He gets up and does it. We both know life isn't 9 times out of 10. Like you said, it's chaotic. Things happen. Sometimes he has to work late because he has to, or his kids get sick, or half his house falls down, or life happens, which it does. Well, he's done it 9 times when it's been straightforward. The 10th time, he either does it anyway because he's built that discipline, that habit, or he's able to take a step back, look holistically, and go, well, what can I do instead? And I think it's a very long-winded answer to what you asked me, but on the face of it, there's small little incremental bits we need to build in, and that makes sense. But if they don't happen, even if they're small, we need to look at the root causes of what's stopping them. Now, that's one example around exercise. I guarantee most of the gents I work with, there'll be a plethora of habits, behaviours, or a mindset up and downstream that's not serving them to do or not do whatever it is we're talking about. So part of it's like we need to have these small incremental behaviours that serve us, that compound over time. Same within business. But equally, when they don't happen, it's not your rubbish stops, that's done. It's, for me, that's an opportunity to find out what's really going on, make the whole system more robust, address it and move forward. And so I know it's a long answer to your question, but does that resonate or make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense because, I mean, ultimately we look at things like behavioral traps that we work ourselves into. And I talk a lot in my podcasts about how HR in particular talks about work-life balance. And I think it is just a poster about work-life balance because ultimately you have one life. And within that life, you have to fit in work and exercise and eating and seeing friends and all of the other things you want to do within life. But I think we do fall into a lot of behavioral traps because we put priorities on things. And those priorities sometimes don't start with us, if you get what I mean.
100%, yeah. And something you said there about work-life balance, I talk about it a lot in my content because it's a sort of a concept that people resonate with, right? And it makes sense because the guys I speak to often feel like the balance isn't necessarily right. But I kind of almost think it's sort of a bullshit term for like what you said, because the reality is the gents that I work with and just life in general, especially at the age and stage we're at. If you're thinking about work-life balance, people often think about it as time. And actually, time, the balance is always going to be wrong because you're always going to be spending more time at work. So therefore, you might think I can't have balance or balance is impossible. No, for me, more that balanced feeling is like how you feel as an emergent property based in what you're doing. So if you're focused at work, having the different conversations, not procrastinating, you've got clear boundaries around, you're leading your team well. And then when you walk through the door, you're there present for your kids, your wife, you give her a kiss, you're not shouting, you're in a good headspace, and you're looking in the mirror feeling proud of yourself because you're feeling healthy. You will feel balanced. Now, the elapsed time you spend at work versus your family time will be much more work than family. But I think you will feel, quote unquote, imbalanced because you're showing up as the person you want across a multitude of areas. That's how I kind of like to think about it and conceptualize it, right? It's because...
Yes, yeah.
It's a problem because some people go, it's impossible. I'm a CEO of a large firm. And no, you're not going to spend more time. But let's make sure the time that you are spending in both of those domains is quality. And that's the key bit. And that's the bit we have, in my experience, a lot more control over than we think. And that's where the 1% bits come in. It's like, well, what you think you need to do might not be right, but there's lots we can do. And it's about lowering the bar and making that appropriate to get the most out of yourself.
But it's also that time for yourself. And I know, we all sort of mock the me time that people often come out with. But I think people miss that when you look at the balance in life. You do need some time where you're focusing on yourself in terms of, it could be exercise, it could be reading, it could just be having a 5-minute kip,
Yeah, totally. There's a cliched phrase, but I like it. It's like you need to put your oxygen mask on first. Excuse me, it's really true because long term, if you're martyring yourself to work or whatever else and you're not taking care of yourself, well, it only ends one way and it's not good, And I see guys on the spectrum with that. Some guys really are almost in the ground and other guys, they can see it, but they're not there yet. But equally, if you don't take care of yourself, it only goes one way. And I'm not just talking physically, mentally, emotionally, the whole piece, right? If you're not looking after yourself, it doesn't end well,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't ever end well. And on that as well, if we look at something like resilience, because we've recognised that people do work hard, they play hard, they have lots to do, and it's chaotic and all this kind of stuff. But how do we build resilience within that ecosystem at the same time, in a way that's sustainable? Because again, during COVID, I started the 200 press ups in a day trend.
Nice.
And when I looked at it, I thought, how do I do that? I can't just do 200 press ups in one go. I don't have the upper body strength and the arm strength to do it. And I haven't exercised for a while. So I just started with 5 press ups. That was it. I just started doing 5 press ups and then I did it multiple times through the day. And after about 30 days, I did get up to 200 press ups. And that was really good. But then how mentally do people build that resilience so it is sustainable?
For me, I think resilience, it's about just giving yourself evidence repeatedly that you are someone who does what they say and what they commit to. And a lot of it's not the only thing, but one of the areas where I think this feeling of it's all great on paper, I don't feel great myself, I feel a bit internally. And you'll hear very senior, successful guys talk about imposter syndrome and low confidence. And outwardly, you'd be like, what? But then they open up and that's what they talk about. You're like, what's going on there? And it speaks, and this does answer, the way I would answer the question around resilience is, I think that kind of low self-esteem, sort of imposter syndrome, outwardly great, inwardly don't feel great, comes from, not the only thing, but a large part of it is commitments to oneself that aren't kept. Because no one else sees those, but you get 360 HD vision on all of it. And so if you're making commitments to yourself that you're not keeping, for me, that's like Chinese water torture for your self-esteem. It's like drip, drip, drip. And it's not one big thing, but it's all these little things that add up. So, for example, you wake up in the morning, right, I'm not going to play on my phone. I'm going to give my wife a kiss. I'm going to be present this morning. Roll straight on your phone, stressing emails. Right, I'm not going to shout at the kids. I'm going to give them the time they need. You shout, you bite their heads off because they're distracting you from your phone. You can have a healthy breakfast. You eat some shit, right? You just about run out the door, and when you get to work, you can have a different conversation with the team and the client. You don't, you ignore it. You can have a healthy lunch. You eat some shit. We work through. When you come home, you're going to put your phone down. You're not going to be on it. You walk through the door. You kick off. You shout at the kids. I'm not going to drink any wine tonight. You do. I'm definitely going to exercise this evening. You don't. Right. So it sounds really bad, but one of those things in isolation, no big deal, right? No one's a robot. No one's perfect.
Yes.
Nor should we try to be. But if there's a load of that stacked up in your day and your week, just on repeat, just ticking over in the background, you're just internally telling yourself you're full of shit and you don't do what you say. And that's not me saying that of someone. I'm saying it's just a fact because you have that internal narrative and that voice. And so I think that's a very non-resilient place to be, because anything that happens, you try to do, it doesn't happen. It's like the world's against you. And so I think resilience comes from giving yourself evidence that you do what you say. But then when things go wrong, which they will in life and work and business repeatedly, what's the Buddhists say, life is suffering. So take that as a default. It's being able to stop and objectively take a step back and go, right, what's happened? What are we going to do? What do we do next time? Or I've had an occasion where I haven't showered myself in glory. I have screamed and shouted at the kids, even if I'm feeling pretty good, right? Do I just brute force it and go, I'm me big, I'm right? Or no, that wasn't right, actually. Well, how can I then show them, how to resolve conflict and come back from something when you have messed up? And so I think the resilience piece comes from, of course, there's the compounding effect of showing yourself you do what you say. So making commitment, keeping it, making a commitment, keeping it, making a commitment, keeping it. But then also when something doesn't go your way, does go wrong, being able to stop and course correct. There's a Stoic concept that I talk about a lot. It's not mine, but it's 1,000 years old. And Ryan Holiday's got a book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's the impediment to action, it advances action. I think it's Marcus Aurelius said it. And the whole idea there is that when things are going pear-shaped or going wrong or you messed up, there's actually magic in that if you allow for it. And it can be misconstrued because there's this whole Stoic way of thinking. It's like, well, it's glorious when things go wrong. No, when you feel like you're messed up and it's shit and it's difficult or work's really stressful or it's not great, there's no glory in that. But actually, if you're able to
really
interrogate,
bad,
it is really, really hard. It is. But if you are able to interrogate it and work through it, the hardest, most difficult times in your life, if you look back now, it's always like a positive story arc. It's like, well, that happened, then this, and this. And so it's being able to stop and recognize that. So again, not a very straightforward answer, but I think resilience comes from that. It's that ability to make commitments and keep them across the board. But then when life disrupts that, which it will do all the time, being able to just stop a second and work out what you can do instead, or what you're going to do within it, or let go of it because there's nothing you can do. But I think that's all of that is predicated on you yourself being in a reasonable headspace in the first place. If you're stressed, overwhelmed, away, unhappy, it's very hard to be objective like that.
I mean, I think the positive story arc is the most amusing bit, because that is essentially almost all social media, and especially LinkedIn.
Toxic positivity, right? It's all that. It's like
all you see is the positivity.
Exactly.
I think one of the other things you mentioned in there was about imposter syndrome, which is very interesting. And this is a sort of side question that comes off that. So, I mean, recently I was writing some songs for something, and one of them was about the masks we wear. Whether we wear a mask with friends and different friends, we wear a mask with our work colleagues, whether it's our bosses or our subordinates. And this again comes down to resilience, because we know we're constantly putting on different faces for different people, because that's just how the world is. It's when we take that mask fully off, the question is who are we?
Who are we then? Yeah, exactly.
Because nobody knows the true person at the end, because you put different masks on for different people.
Yeah, I guess that's a potentially scary one. I don't know if you've got an answer to that, but it's
no.
I think though, if you are someone who does practice what they preach, you do what you say, you make commitments, the whole stuff we just described, right? I think like you do, or one feels more comfortable in yourself because you kind of align what you say, or like you're being honest and sharing with where you're at and what you want in the right way. Because sometimes that whole like, let's be vulnerable or speak your truth. It's not carte blanche to be a dickhead. Like, there's levels to it, right? But it's also being able to communicate, well, actually, that's not right, or whatever else. And I think if you're in that space, that's where I think things like imposter syndrome, low self-esteem, confidence diminish, and you feel better, right? I think what you said about the mask thing, I think there is always a mask for everyone, even like your wife or something. You've just got different ways, your kids, it's like you've got different ways that you show up, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if you are brute forcing things, say at work, and you're not feeling great, and it's all great, and it's not. I think that's where it can become toxic, because it's like there's a total misalignment between how you're feeling and then what you're portraying. And if that bit's not joined up, that's it. If you're like, I behave slightly differently in this environment with my boss versus with my kids, I think that's perfectly normal and okay, right?
Yes.
It's if you're like, yeah, it's all great to your team, and you're putting on the front, but actually you don't feel you're owning that.
Yeah, it's
Exactly,
inauthentic, and people see that, and they recognize it very quickly. I mean, you said before that emotional awareness is one of the biggest differentiators between good and great leaders. So why? I mean, it's quite an undeveloped skill in management, in business circles. Well, I mean, over the last few years, we've talked about moving from IQ to EQ, and that sort of raised quite quickly in the HR field, and then it sort of dampened down a bit. Well, why do you think this skill is so undeveloped when a lot of my business as a CEO for a retail business is about the people that I'm working with and that are working for me and that are serving my customers? So why is it so undeveloped?
I mean, I don't know, and I haven't directly worked in a corporate environment for quite a while now. I've worked for myself for quite a long time, so I can't speak from direct experience. So what I'm about to say might be completely incorrect. I don't actually know. My spidey sense as to why it isn't is perhaps historically there's been a very top-down kind of approach to management, which is I'm the boss, I know what I'm doing, kind of do what I say to some degree. Now that is a huge generalization I've just made there, right? So of course I'm sure there's lots of situations where that's not the case, but perhaps just historically that's been more the more hierarchical approach, right?
Do you think it comes from sort of patriarchal masculinity?
I don't know about that. I think
maybe.
I mean maybe, I don't know. I think just typically more of a just general experience and where you're at. And so if someone is more senior, got more time under the belt, that therefore whatever they say would be more, I guess,
holds more weight,
gospel.
Perhaps.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So perhaps like the being more in touch with how you're feeling, what it means, what someone else wants, it's almost been seen as second fiddle. But ultimately, I think, and the guys that I talk to now, like, if you want to get the most out of people in their team, it's not about telling them brute forcing, right? There's an aspect always of like, if you're talking to someone who's 22, just come out of uni, right, and you're the CEO of a business, I would challenge why you're talking to them, because probably if you're a large business, there should be someone else talking to them. But B, to some degree, you want to listen to that person, but then they haven't got the experience. They don't know what they're talking about, really, and that's okay. But equally, as you go up, like, you want to be able to, I believe, empower your team to make decisions for themselves, feel respected, feel valued. And if you're brute forcing, from a management perspective or micromanaging, you're not going to get the most out of those people. And so I think you've got to be in touch with yourself and what you're feeling and how you're feeling about life and what's going on, but also them as well. Because not always, but a lot of the time, I think people, when you've got conflict or difficulty within the workplace, most of the time people are aligned, but it's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding, and there's a lack of total transparency as to what's been going on. There's a phrase I love, which is unspoken expectations or premeditated resentments. And so that can work in your personal relationships, but it can massively work at work as well, right? And so often I have chats with guys who are pretty senior, but have you been totally explicit about the behavior that's expected and what's needed? And the answer is usually no. There's been assumptions made on what it should be. And if that's the case, well, then it's not on them, it's on you to be able to communicate that. Now, once you then get to that and agree the behavior that's expected, I think then you can make a more conscious, objective decision. Now, what I'm talking about here is almost the opposite of actually emotional intelligence, but it's being able to recognize that there's somebody there, they've got emotions and feelings, you might be angry about a situation, and I think you've got to recognize that, but then almost park that, because that's not going to help anything. It'll color it. I had this conversation with a CEO the other day, and he was talking about got this guy in the leadership team, and everyone's like, oh, he's just a bit of a dick. And I was like, okay, probably is, but like, how does that help in terms of feedback for him or you? So I said, what do you mean by just a bit of a dick? And he's like, well, actually, like, he'll muscle in, he'll try and give advice to other senior members when he doesn't deserve it. They've asked him not to do this, and so then a load of reasons come out. I said, okay, so actually, he's being perceived as being a dick. The reason he's being perceived as being a dick is because of this behaviour. Now, what behaviour is expected and what's needed, and we talked it through. And I was like, so, and the gent the CEO I was talking to wasn't looking forward to this conversation. I was like, well, actually, with the right lens here, you've got an opportunity to have a really positive conversation, because he probably knows that people think he's a bit of a dick, doesn't like that, and he's a bit like, what the fuck do I need to do? And so,
Help him out,
actually, if we're open and honest, and we're transparent about what's expected, what's needed. You talk about the behaviour, not the person. It's not your shit. It's no, your behaviour around this issue or area. We need it to change. Well, then straight away it makes it easier and more objective. But I think, why is that important for emotional intelligence? Well, you need to know where you're at and what you're feeling and be able to be objective about that. And so part of this, I think he's a bit of a dick. That doesn't matter. It's not going to help anyone. So what does dickish behaviour look like, and what does positive behaviour look like, and how can we adapt that? Does again, I think I've given you quite a long-winded answer there, but that would be my take on it. I think as a leader, you want to be able to be as objective as possible, communicate what's wanted and needed, and be totally transparent. And I think when you're transparent, practicing what you preach, doing what you say, I think that trickles down into everybody else. If you're hedging it, or you're a people pleaser and you want to sort of say things to make people be nice, but you're not really saying what's needed, that doesn't help them, it doesn't help you, and actually being disingenuous to the person, because if you're not really communicating what they need to hear, it's not about them, it's about you not liking how it makes you feel when you're giving feedback. And so that's why you need to be in touch with. I don't like how I feel when I'm having this conversation, but it's not about me, and that's okay. And that's why you need to be aware of what's going on. So you'll avoid conflict because it makes you feel a certain way, but it's not your job as a very senior person to do that. You need to be able to do that, but it's about having the conflict in the right way. It doesn't even have to be conflict, it's about being objective. So does that
no, it works out. And ultimately the business suffers, and then that causes problems. I mean, one of the things I've always had an issue with over the years is these 3, 5, and 10-year strategic plans that people come out with, and then it gets presented to the board and everybody's happy, and then it goes in your desk, and then it's forgotten until the next year when you have to do another 3, 5, and 10-year strategic plan. So what I did with Circle K is I started up a weekly Kcast podcast, basically, that went onto the learning and development WhatsApp group, so that everybody could actually get access to my words and what I was trying to say, what the expectations were, without a huge amount of dilution or interpretation or misinterpretation by multiple people. Because if it's coming from me as a CEO, then it's going to a general manager, then to an operations director, then to an ops manager, then to a district manager, then to a store manager, then to the barista. There's so much gap and space for misinterpretation and reinterpretation of what actually the strategy is about. So by doing this weekly podcast, that message was going directly into everybody's ears, directly to them.
Yeah. And then there's no ambiguity as to what's been talked about or what you're talking about or what the vision is or the direction is, because people can literally hear exactly what you're saying. And that's a lot of the conversations I have, especially with the clients that I work kind of like exec coaching one-to-one basis. It's that kind of thing. It's like, well, you've got to show you practice what you preach and have those honest conversations. Because if you want your team to be honest and empower others, you have to do that. You're leading the ship, right? And so it comes from you to do that. But I think to be able to do that, you need to be in touch with how you're feeling, how you react, and how you're behaving yourself.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
And I need
to want to do it as well. Because again, it will come across as inauthentic if my voice is not coming across correctly. Then people recognise it, whether I'm in store, on a podcast, or
exactly
presenting to the board. It's the same thing. One of the things I'm interested in is obviously you've also worked with athletes and executives. From a sports perspective, two very different worlds, but some similarities. So what can retail leaders, if I look at my business, learn from sports psychology, especially about consistency, focus, and the power of routine?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't actually work with athletes per se. It's been more, I guess, guys who are businessmen that have maybe historically had an athletic background. I don't actually work directly with athletes, to be totally transparent. But I think so. That's the first point. but on that though, I do think the way I like to think about it, and if what you hear about how high performance works in a sporting background, the methodology and the approach is actually kind of the same. And I guess. So the parallel, let's say, of an athlete versus a businessman, right? And this is the way I like to, conceptualize it. So let's say this was an athlete, right? You've got person A for the athlete. He wakes up on time, he hydrates himself, he weighs himself because he's on top of his health. He needs to be a certain weight and make sure that he's fit and healthy. He has a specific breakfast. He does some mindfulness, focus stuff to keep his head grounded. He then, if he's got a family, he's with them, he spends time with them. Then he gets to the track and starts doing his practice. He's on it, he stays hydrated, he eats healthily. He isn't bothering checking social media about stuff because he wants to be there and focused. He does the work there, he's diligent. And then when he gets home, he spends time with the family again. He does some recovery work. He focuses on stuff. He reads up on some stuff that he needs to focus on for his whatever it is his sport is, and that's him done, right? That's person A. Athlete B wakes up slightly hungover. He's knackered. Fucks about on his phone first thing in the morning. Doesn't spend any time with his family. He's a bit stressed about it. Eats some crap that he hasn't really thought about. He's glued to his screen, so he's not really focused and mindful. He gets to the track. He half-arses it. He hasn't really got a plan for what he's meant to be doing. He's ignored the plan that his trainers sent. He eats another bit of crap at lunchtime. He gets to the door at the end of the day, and then he's like, "Oh, balls this, I'm a bit knackered," and has a couple of drinks. Which athlete's going to perform better? Right, yeah. A or B, right? And it's an absolute no-brainer, right? You would of course. And actually, if you saw an athlete behaving like that, you'd be like, "What the hell's what are you playing at?" But okay, we'll play out the same example for someone who works for business, right? So you got person A, wakes up fresh on it. He's had a good night's sleep. Leans over, gives his missus a kiss. Gets up, does a little bit of physical activity because he's built into his morning. Has a cold shower, freshens himself up. Maybe he's got a little bit of time for some headspace stuff. Then he's with his kids, giving them what they need. He's not glued to his phone yet. He hasn't even checked his work phone yet. Has a healthy breakfast, walks out the door, looks feeling sharp, looks in the mirror, gets to the train on time, no rush, commutes into the office, walks through the door, has a good chat with his team, sees an email that he's stressed about, he parks it, has a different conversation, eats healthy lunch, walks through the door in the evening, gives his kids and kisses a kiss. He's decompressed, so he's got a good headspace. He's not on his phone. Right, person A, person B, right? He wakes up stressed, he's hungover, he's knackered, does no exercise, shouts at his missus because she's asking why he's on his phone. Then he shouts at the kids because they're trying to talk to him. Races out the door just on time with a pan of chocolate in his face. He's covered in crap, misses the train, then gets the next train, walks to the door. His PA shouts at him because he's got something he's stressed about that, eats some crap, has some wine at lunch with one of his team, walks to the door at the end of the day, glued to his phone, missus annoyed at him, then he has some wine to take the edge off. Which version of those is going to perform better at work? And it sounds really, really obvious, right? But in my experience, people don't join those dots. And I'll speak to a guy who's the version B. And yeah, it works fine, it's great, and it probably is phase going well. But it's like running with a parachute on, you know, you're doing all right. And this is where a lot of gents I work with, so I'm working with a CEO of a law firm, right? A large law firm. Do I know how to manage a law firm? Absolutely not. I've got I'm not qualified. Can I empower the guy I'm working with to be better, think better, operate better, feel better, and across the board? Then, as an emergent property, he's going to perform better at work. It's just a fact. Yes. Just like the athlete will perform better. But it's the kind of the same approach and mindset. So again, another roundabout answer. But does that make sense?
No, that fits very well. And one of the interesting things that you brought up there was about mindfulness, and how that plays a part. And again, this is something that's been brought up not just from HR recently, but also around the world, specifically since the pandemic. I think people have been speaking about mindfulness a lot. So you see it on posters and values and mission statements, but often it's a lot of background noise because people don't properly practice mindfulness. They're not really sure what it means. They think that you've got to sit there with your knees crossed and your elbows on your knees with your fingers up, as though you're clasping some symbols. But sometimes that's not it. Sometimes it's just sitting, closing your eyes and just thinking for 5 minutes. And I think a lot of business leaders, and again, this is something that I see quite a lot, is that they don't have that 5 minutes thinking time, because rather than taking that time, they're just spouting out answers all the time. And sometimes those answers are going to be pretty far off the mark in terms of what needed to be done, because they didn't just spend an extra 5 minutes just saying, okay, shut my office door, just let me think about this a minute, let me think about it properly, and then move forward.
Totally. I like to think about it. It's just being a bit more present and intentional with what's going on in your decisions. Now, there are pretty practical things that you can do to help with that. Things like meditation. And that sounds woo-woo, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Breath work. So and some of it's about taking yourself actually out of your head and into your body, right? And so it's because the two things are interlinked. Because if you're running around like a headless chicken being pulled to pillar to post, and you want to make a big strategic decision, that's not the great headspace to be in. And so some of the best, in my experience, some of my best thoughts and ideas come from the stillness and the quiet, right? And it's hard to create it. And so looping back right to the start, well, I'm too busy. Well, could you sit for 2 minutes with your eyes shut? And we all know it's bullshit if someone says no, they can't, right? So it's about lowering the bar and what you can do. Before you send that email, take a breath. Walk around your office, walk around your desk, and then sit down again. Like little things like that can make a big difference. Write the email, then don't send it. Then leave it for 5 minutes and come back and read that. So there's little ways we can sort of put those little breaks in to help us be more mindful. Because a lot of the time, those emails, you go, well, that's a bit spicy. let's not do that.
Oh, yes.
So there's little hacks you can whack in to do that. But I think
strangely, one of the ones that I used to use, because I was quite a hothead as a sort of new manager, young manager, and it was sort of taught to me by somebody else. And as we were sitting down, what the guy said was to hold on to the arm of the chair. So I would sit there and I would be holding literally onto the arm of the chair to make me stop responding or speaking or instantly reacting. And then I couldn't react until I'd let go of the arm of the chair. And it was just a sort of practical exercise to stop me rising my temperature and temper, and just, verbal diarrhea coming out, which wouldn't help the person that was trying to tell me something, and stopped me responding too quickly because maybe I haven't heard all of the story.
Yeah, well, that kind of what you're describing there, I think the phrase, like, if you meet, there's a more forceful way to say it, but I'll say it slightly more politely. If you meet 20 dickheads in a day, you're the dickhead, right? Because, and what I mean by that is you can be the author of your own chaos. Like in that example there, if you're just reacting, shouting, blah, 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 like, and then everyone's after me and everyone's shit, well, are they? Because if it's everyone, maybe you need to have a look in the mirror.
It's me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it was definitely me. Yeah. And so, but something like that, it can be as simple as just stop a second. Like think before you speak, what's really going on, and just giving yourself a bit of space. You go, hold a sort of second. And that also allows you to go, this person that's come at you that you think's coming at you, you can then stop and go, well, actually, what's really going on here? Well, maybe he's really stressed about this, and this. And so actually I need to help him with that. And so it's coming at me with this. And so it allows you to have that more objective, strategic viewpoint to really help someone see what's going on. If you're super reactive to everything, and that goes back to the bit about being emotionally intelligent and going, well, actually, what it is he's not stressed about this, he's really worried about that. Well, let's help him and work through that part. But if you just react to whatever someone says to you within 2 seconds, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to be able to do that, So I think it's really important. And you've probably gathered I'm not great at this all the time because I'm 100 miles an hour all the time as well. So it's I just want to say, if anyone's listening, I'm not talking about this like I'm some saint and I'm perfect with all of it. I have to work on all this stuff myself. But it is important if you just stop and take a breath. Like the main channel for me is WhatsApp for my business. That's where it's how I do most of my comms. Within the business, it's Slack, but like as in externally, it's WhatsApp. And like I know a rule where, good or bad, I just don't reply instantly because it's so easy to go, like that. And it's like, no, because like you're not necessarily going to give the best answer. And I've definitely had times where I've gone, bam, 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 and gone, oh, I should have just waited. And now I've thought about it, gone, you know what? Actually, this would have been a better answer. And so all that takes sometimes is 30 seconds, but it's important. Well, it's also at the other end because, you see the person and they get the 2 ticks, which means it's delivered, and then they get the 2 blue ticks. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, respond, answer me.
Exactly.
Give them 5 minutes. So, it's also both sides. We've got to allow other people to spend that time to think about what you said to them and then respond in a better way that will actually add some value. I mean, one thing I'm certainly picking up from this so far is about bringing your whole self to work. And I suppose not just work. This is also about home life as well. Um, is it possible to be always on all the time as your whole self?
Um, by whole self, what do you mean?
I'm using your sort of vernacular. So
Yeah.
it's about bringing your whole self to work. So you're always there. You're always present. You're always
Yeah.
thinking about this and the other. And I think this comes back a little bit to mindfulness as well, and comes back to one of our first discussions about spending some time on yourself,
Yes.
because that gives you time to be present.
Yeah. So I think so. Can you be on perfect on it all the time? No, I think it's a short answer,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
the first point to answer it, the first part of that is we're all fallible. None of us are perfect all the time. You're never always going to shower yourself in glory, and that's just a fact. I think I'd like to myself personally, and for the guys I work with, want to try to be your best in all the time, but we're just recognizing none of us are going to be, and we are fallible, and that's also okay. Um, and I think that speaks back to what we said earlier about the whole resilience thing. Going, well, if I recognise I'm not always going to be great, well, when I haven't been, can I then stop, be objective, review my behaviour, what have I done, and then course correct in the right way? And I think that's important for the first part. But then secondly, you said about the work and the home bit. I think the two are inextricably linked because, again, I've worked with guys who a lot of the conversations initially might be all about home and how the relationships are there and how they're dealing with the wife and how they're dealing with the kids and those sort of things. It's like, well, what's this got to do with me performing better at work? And I'll have feedback that, oh, they're performing miles better. Because if they're happier at home when they walk through the door of the office and they're content and they've had a nice morning, they've had a good conversation, they've had some intimacy with the partner, whatever it is, right? That person is going to be better at work because they're in a happier state, right? And so now there might be other things at work we need to work on as well, and they usually are, but the two things aren't mutually exclusive. It's sort of symbiotic. And so, and again, it's that, well, are they always going to be perfect at home? Absolutely not. I'm not. So there's an example the other day we talk about, with your partner, sympathy, not solutions. As guys, we often want to just go, yeah, we'll just fix it like that. I talk about that all the time, and I'm helping guys with it. And then the other day, we're currently trying to move house, and there's some stress around it. And I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. Let's be stoic about it, and not really listening to my wife. And she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, yeah, right. Sorry, I'm in the stoic mode, But like, so you have to remind you and catch yourself. But the point I'm making is, I think your true self or being your best. I think if you're trying in all those areas and recognizing that you're going to fail, but that's okay. But then when you do fail, owning it, putting your hand up and looking at your part in it and seeing what you can do. I think that's, for me, that's the best. That's the best we can do. And I think if you're able to be in that state, I feel like that's where high performance comes on both fronts, right? You feel like you're great at home and you're showing up as best you can, or you messed up and you scream and shout at the kids, but then actually you're able to talk to them and show them how a grown adult reconciles and shows their part in it and helps them understand and recognise without not saying sorry, but just saying sorry, but then also articulating and understanding. You've had a conversation like that and you've rectified a problem. I would challenge you might even feel better the next day had that not happened at all and you just had a nice evening because you're showing yourself and you see what I mean? And so I think, in fact, I had literally a conversation just before on the call was a gentleman that I work with, senior, another guy who runs a law firm. And he was like, he was like, yeah, well, it's been a pretty tough week. And I had like two really hard conversations today. I feel amazing. I was like, how cool is that? Because I'm not saying, aren't I great? Because what I've done, it's the work he's done and us working together. But objectively, on paper, that was a shit week, right? But he's there. I feel great because he's had those two different conversations are actually going to go in a real positive sense, but he's owning it on top of it. So again, another slightly long-winded answer there, but I think for me, that's it. It's recognizing we're fallible, but doing your best despite that. And then when things go wrong and you mess up, which you will, how can you course correct and try to do that as quickly as possible? And sometimes that might be straight away. Other times you might stew on it for a couple of days, but then at some point pull your finger out your arse and move forward. That's the point.
And sometimes let the other person stew on it for a few days as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
They might also need to come down.
Totally. Exactly.
Okay, that's really good. As part of Retail 101 Online series, I try to break things down into 3 simple takeaways. So if you were to summarize the 1% mindset into 3 actions that, some of my listeners could start doing today, what would they be?
First one is a heuristic is what can you do, right? So if you told yourself you can't, you're too busy, you haven't got time, I would challenge whatever it is, there is something you can do, but you might need to lower the bar considerably. And so if you're able to do that and go, exercise is an easy, good example, right? So it's like, I ain't got time to go to the gym. Can you do one push-up when you get out of bed? Of course I can. Well, you've got time to exercise then. And it sounds a bit trite, but that's the approach. But now that concept applies everywhere. Our ego doesn't like it. And especially if you're not feeling happy, you know, the environment I described about where someone's head's at, they're not in a good space, all great on paper, but like it can feel like you've got a big mountain to climb. And so what's one push-up going to do? Or like literally just putting your phone down at 5 p.m. versus being on it constantly? Well, not a lot. But actually, it will do a lot. And in my experience, those little things compound. So the first point is recognizing it's looking at, well, what can you do, not what can't you do, right? And then the second point to that is setting the bar really low. like again, so it's like, what can I do and can I commit to that I can definitely do? And it's saying work as well. Like you mentioned these like 5-year plan. When do they ever happen? Never.
Yes,
right?
never.
It doesn't. Also, because we discussed life chaos, it never happens anyway. But it just doesn't go. It just doesn't go anywhere. And same with oneself. Like you might go, well, I'm going to get up and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to have a cold shower and I'm going to do some exercise and I'm going to and you might click on and do some of that, and I'm not going to drink, and there's this huge list of things you're going to do, and I'm going to be mindful. And then like after 2 days, it falls over because life gets in the way, and you go, oh fuck it, that's it, back to square one. So it's like start small. Like what can you commit to that you can totally achieve? And then the third point really is the bit about the resilience. It's that when something goes wrong, what is my part in it? What do I need to do, and how can I course correct? And I think if you can run those three things, I mean, like sort of together, I think as a principle that helps with high performance, because you're the top of it. It's about well, regardless of what I'm looking at, what can I do? The second point is like, you know, if I'm going to do something, what is it I can do and what is possible? And then the third point is when it goes wrong, I need to interrogate it. What's my part in it and how can I correct it? And I think if you're just running that as a little script in the background of your life, I find that can be quite powerful. Now it can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
It sounds really simple, but it's not easy, right? That's the point. And my experience as well with myself working with a coach and generally is more often than not the conversations you have, like the aha moments are absolutely blindingly obvious on the face of it, right? It's like you go, really? Like, oh, I can't believe I could see it. But in my experience, you can't see it when you're in it, right? And the most common thing I hear from guys with coaching is, oh, I know what I need to do, I just don't do it. And so, but I think that speaks to that conceptually you might have an idea, but actually the very practical nature, maybe you don't. And so it's about thinking about if, just like in business, if something's not working, your sales aren't coming in, you don't often, if you're good at what you do, you don't just keep doing it. You go, stop, whoa, what's not working? What do we need to do here? What do we need to do to course correct? What do we change?
Reset.
And it's that being able to, like, again, be intentional and analyze what's going on and then move forward. And I think that would be it. Does that answer the question?
No, that's brilliant. I mean, that's that really does sort of give us the insights in for the team into where they need to start. I mean, again, in our vernacular, I'd almost call it going back to basics. You know,
100%.
It's the product on a clean shelf with a price ticket. You know, that's the very basic of what we need to do. And if you can just settle into yourself and understand yourself and what's happening, I mean that's really good. So, okay. Fantastic, Luke. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was Luke Doran, everyone, from the 1%, giving us a masterclass on mindset, motivation, and marginal gains in retail leadership. We'll be back next month with another Retail Voices episode. Check out retail101online.com for more details of our upcoming guests. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell wherever you get your podcast fix so you don't miss a single episode. Welcome to the Retail Education Revolution. Thanks, Luke.
I built the towers in the sky, the suits, the boardroom lights, got the house, the kids, the Sunday plans. I'm winning by the rights, but at night the mirror's telling lies. I'm moving but I'm stuck. The engine's running but the gears are cold. The fire's lost its touch. I can talk the talk, I can wear the mask, but under all this armor the ground begins to crack. And the question haunts me when the lights go down: are you alive or just playing the part you found? 1% closer every single day. One small move, one habit stays. Not chasing perfection, just steady in the fight. From burnout to balance, we're rising into light. 1% closer, one step at a time, and the sum of all these little wins will change your life. There's a father in the picture, but he's miles away. A leader on the surface, but inside he fades. Health is slipping through the cracks, energy on the floor. No boundary for the nights, no strength behind the door. You are the problem, but you're the only way out. On the mess, on the map, shift the fear to doubt. Because nobody else will build the life you wanna live. It starts with one small habit, with all you have to give. 1% closer every single day. One small move, one habit stays. Not chasing perfection, just steady in the fight. From burnout to balance, we're rising into light. 1% closer, one step at a time, and the sum of all these little wins will change your life. Feel the fire in your bones, let the storm blow through. When the chaos calls your name, you'll be standing true. No ideal man on a pedestal, no imaginary throne. Just a version of yourself who's present in his own home. And when the world throws its worst, you'll roll with it and win. Because you built the foundation on what's real, what's pure,